Have steps going up through the cave. Do be aware that they're a bit uneven. There are some handrails there in places all the time. There are candles about that are obviously hot. Most people, I think, know what candles are. But the main thing as far as preservation of Baron's Cave is concerned, we do ask that people don't touch the walls, as the sand is very soft and the old graffiti will all be rubbed away if everybody was to touch it. So we do say, please don't touch the walls, and that particularly applies to small fingers that seem to do the most damage. Don't touch the walls, please. Okay, that'd be great if we could do that, then everything would be fine. So we've got a party up the top there, they're just getting out of the way. So we'll be able to carry on up the passage, up through Baron's Cave, under the castle mound of Reigate, until we come up to close underneath the pyramid in the middle of the castle grounds. How many of you are local? Yeah. Locals? No. No sign of locals at the back there. So whereabouts are you? Wandsworth? Oh, you've come a long way today.
So better be good.
You come a long way south. It's a bit hot down here, isn't it? Okay, we'd like to... The door was first opened this morning. All of Baron's Cave was at around 10 degrees Celsius, centigrade, 50 Fahrenheit, all the way through. A typical cave temperature in this country, where it remains the same all the year round. Now, as soon as they opened the door, the cold, dense air that was in here started flowing out into the bottom of the moat, drawing down the warm, humid air of today down through here. And of course, as soon as it hits the cold air in here, the whole lot condenses out. It just filled up with fog in here this morning. So the first people in sort of, oh, we can't see anything. But that obviously has rapidly cleared out, and we've now got a clear path through. So Baron's Cave dates way back to possibly to Norman times, but probably not quite as far as that. Norman times is when there was the first record of a castle in Reigate. Domesday Book, 1086. William de Warrenne, 1st Earl of Surrey. That's when things started happening around Reigate Castle. The first castle that was built here would have been a wooden castle, just a simple palisade type fence to keep out the marauding tribes of Reigate. Whether there are any marauding tribes of Reigate still, I don't know.
No, there's a couple really.
A couple of them there.
Tribes
Yeah. They probably would have kept you out fairly effectively. So, as time went by, they used local building stone to build a stone castle, and that would have been around the 1300s, that sort of time, 1200s, 1300s. The stone castle was built using stone from the upper green sand beds, which are just underneath Reigate Hill, and that castle remained in place for a while, and through until the Civil War sort of times, when Cavaliers and Roundheads came through here, separately garrisons, never here together, never was a fight or skirmish. And the castle then fell into disrepair, tumbled down, and the people of Reigate then used the stone, they recycled it, a nice early form of recycling, to build the buildings that you see around Reigate today. So nothing was wasted. There's no point in quarrying new stone if they could use part of the old castle. So gradually the old castle disappeared until we're left with virtually nothing today. What you see as part of a castle, or what looks like part of a castle, is actually a folly built by a man called Barnes around 1777. So that is more recent, and it is not
1777.
1777. So it's not part of the original castle. As we go up through Baron's Cave and up to the top here, you'll see a wall up there that is possibly part of the original castle walls. Dates way back to whenever that was first built. Again, a date that was never established in writing. We don't know when it was first built. But Baron's Cave goes way back, associated with the castle. Okay, let's move it up.
You were saying the brickwork?
Yeah.
I think that's got brickwork, but down below it's all stone.
That's right. The stone complex, stuck to this point here. So whether it was actually poor stone and they felt that the roof was starting to come in, so they then masonry lined it, or whether the roof had actually collapsed, so they had to basically build a tunnel and then fill in above it, cut and cover if you like, or might have been a case of collapsing cover. Certainly this bit up the top here has got brickwork. Probably brickwork that's not that old. It doesn't look like it's Tudor brick, it's not quite narrow enough for that, and the bricks look too regular. But certainly this was probably cut and cover here, or certainly covered in, because this might have been an open passageway coming down into this doorway here that goes down into Baron's Cave. What you can see showing up the end here is a bit of stonework, and that's probably the last remaining bit of original castle. The original stone castle is that little bit there, if you exclude it from Baron's Cave. Baron's Cave itself being a sully port, an entranceway, a back entrance perhaps to the castle, tradesman's entrance, well no, possibly not, dungeon, storage. We don't really know why it's there. It might have been a combination of factors, but certainly it was built as a tunnel deliberately to go from this level down to moat level.
And they carved it out, did they? I mean, he wasn't there, he's not natural.
It is not natural, it is all man-made, very nicely carved roof as well. So, as I say, there's been various theories of what it could have been used for, but nobody's sure because nobody bothered to write anything down. Nobody said, we have today, this day in sort of 1350 completed a sally port out of the castle. We just don't know. Nobody wrote anything down. So it's all a bit of a mystery. Okay, if we'd like to carry on. This chamber that we're standing in here is actually a sand mine. It is not an original part of Baron's Cave. The very earliest plan of Baron's Cave does not show this chamber here at all. It shows the steps coming down and going through to the bottom, and the main passage that we'll go into next is all on there, including the stone bench that we'll see at the end. That was all there. This chamber wasn't. You can see by the rough roof and the rough walls that it's just been hacked out with no real thought, as opposed to the main passage, which has got a nicely arched roof and was built as a passage. Here it was just dug out for the sand at a later date. So we can certainly say after what date it was dug out, although we might not know the exact date. Sand was dug out all over Reigate, or shall I say all under Reigate, and here we have in this jar some silica sand, free-flowing sand, and this was dug out for various purposes, which included glass making and as a blotting medium, so that before the days of blotting paper you could sprinkle dry sand onto your manuscript, soak up the excess in. Used in building, obviously in mortars and things like that. You can see the mortar between the stonework further up would have been made obviously with stuff that they probably dug from in here. and also used for putting on the floors of shops and pubs within the Reigate area. It would have been cheaper and easier to get sand than sawdust. Sawdust, there would obviously be a certain price on it, whereas this was available relatively cheaply. The sand was distributed round the pubs and hotels by a boy who would go around with a bucket, take it around, and he was allegedly paid by being given a modicum of ale at each establishment he visited. So by the time he had completed his delivery of sand to every pub in Reigate, he would end up literally as happy as a sand boy. And that apparently is where the expression comes from, that the sand boy would take the sand round to every pub and end up very happy. An interesting job, but probably not one that you can actually live on. Underneath the castle mound, deep underneath, and underneath this area, we used to have a lot more extensive mines, sand mines, and some of you may remember the wine bar, Scott's wine bar on the rocks. Well, that's shown here on this part of the plan. Where it says "you are here" is where this board was down the wine bar. We actually managed to rescue this from the wine bar just before it was filled in. The reason it was filled in is because the London road goes over the top, and there had to be a review of all the major roads in the country when legislation was changed to allow the maximum weight of trucks to be 40 tonnes instead of 32 tonnes, or whatever it was. And so the council decided it's got to be filled in, and so the whole lot was filled in with sand, dug up at Buckley and buried down here. So all this lot unfortunately has been lost. And that was underneath here. Baron's Cave actually runs over the top of this lot. We're actually above this lot. All this lot was below, going down to depths of about 75 feet, something like that. All nice clean sand, not the dirt that we've got here, because this has been here for many centuries, but more recent workings that were all very, very clean, beautiful clean sand on the floor, and really worth a visit when they were open and accessible. Unfortunately now lost, but I was lucky to get down there when I did. Sand dug out for various purposes underneath Reigate at the back of a lot of the shops that would have run through here. Once they dug sand out, they'd have a hole that they could store things in, and if they actually wanted more space for storage, they could dig out more sand and sell the sand on. And so we had this situation, chicken and egg situation, where there was space wanted, a hole wanted, and there was sand wanted, and so all these things, all these holes underneath Reigate generally got dug out. And there are still quite a few accessible today as well. Now, some of you have noticed Mark Bolan over in the corner there. Those of you who are old enough know the significance of Mark Bolan. T-Rex was a New World dinosaur. One of our members had a spare one that he left down here, so we put him in the corner. And while T-Rex was wandering around North America, this sand that you're standing within now was being laid down in this country. It was below the sea when dinosaurs ruled the earth in North America. So the whole of the wilderness series up to Cretaceous was laid down while they were wandering around. We haven't found any dinosaurs in any of the sand mines around here, although there is a marine dinosaur in the upper green sand of a mine at Godstone, which we found in the roof and had identified as being a marine dinosaur. We don't know what type, but it's definitely there. Not a lot of dinosaurs in these parts. Okay, let's go down. Here we've got a sheep or a cowls that? Check that the needle does move on it, and yes, it does move, so it's not a fix as far as that. But it remains more or less the same the whole year round. Now this would have been the temperature that the whole of Barron's Cave was first thing this morning when we opened the door at the bottom. The main passage is cleared through with the passage of air going through, and apart from the hundreds of people that have come in here today, possibly raising the temperature a bit in here, the temperature will remain all the year round is around 10 degrees. So this immediately lends weight to the possible use of Barron's Cave being storage of fruit and vegetables and other perishables. Brought in here, it will be kept nice and cool. Now with around the north part of the castle grounds, ice could have been taken off the moat, brought down here, and turns this entire passage here into one big ice house. That's a certain possibility.
Medieval form of a fridge.
That's right, it would have been a fridge. Now if it's 10 degrees C, 50 Fahrenheit by itself naturally, chucking a load of ice in here, and the fact that we are down from the main level of the passage through, so if you build up a level of cold air in here, it's not going to flow out anywhere, it's going to build up those steps and actually seal in this lot to become very, very chilly and cold in here. Nobody's written down that's what it was used for. All we can do is surmise that was a possible use for it. It may be that as time went by and more holes were dug out underneath premises actually within Reigate town, shops dug their own cellars, etc. They could then have their own storage close at hand, but it may be that this was a first big communal storage facility here. It may have been used as a dungeon, it may have been used for other purposes, we don't really know, but almost certainly through the centuries it's been used for many, many purposes, for meetings and that sort of thing. At Barron's Cave, where they were told its history, if it was known. Certainly, people who come down here left their names. We've got G. King, A. Broughton, 1778, showing up there. The Kings were a local family. We don't know if G. King was one of the locals or somebody else, but there's a possibility that some of these names could be traced back to the local registers.
Into the name.
Yeah.
So this one was a test pilot, he died at some and it was quite sort of interesting.
Yeah.
There's what type of people
That's
you had the
right.
name, do you want to find out what type of people are coming down to town?
Yeah. And one of the problems is that a lot of them are just initials, so WW 1818.
Hang on a minute, Jack.
Well, stuck really.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah,
We're getting a
okay.
bit fidgety.
Right, okay, yeah.
So right, we thank you very much.
You're only taking one lamp with you.
we'll leave it on the desk.
That's all right, it's got a powerful light.
Oh yeah, it's a bit dark, isn't it?
Yeah, we're fine, just go off and leave us, we don't care. No, I've got two, so there's a candle. Actually, if you were to put all your lights out and just wait for a while, you'd find that there's actually enough light, even with just those little candles around there, there's actually enough light to see way out. On the ends here, we have got, goes back obviously pre-plague, pre-fire of London. So, it is very old down here.
Has it always been this height though? Because that seems, if that's the first initial, it seems silly to climb up there to do it, and you'd probably do
Well,
it.
there was this masonry bench, so people could get higher up there. But you would have noticed when you came in, that you came down the steps to floor level, and that the ceiling actually went up. From the low arch that you came through, the ceiling went up. So it seems that they came down to this original floor level, which was probably this level. There's been a lot of scraping out since. They came down to this original level and then carved the ceiling upwards.
Right.
They didn't come in and then dig down, having carved the ceiling. They've actually gone upwards.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just so deliberate. I mean, there's the end of the arching there, you know, and that level carries on through, and you'll pick it up on that ridge sort of along the edge. But having come round inside the castle mound, to keep it within the mound, because if you went straight it would pop out in the side of the moat, we've now come round, we're facing east. So another possible use of Baron's Cave over time would have been for clandestine religious purposes. That when the Puritans, Cromwell and such like, were persecuting the Catholics, for instance, Catholics could easily have come in here, celebrated Mass in peace and quiet with a guard posted top and bottom.
It's soundproof, I would think.
That's right.
Yeah.
You could make all sorts of noise down here and nobody would know. Similarly, when Catholics were persecuting Puritans, the other way around, Protestants or whatever, well, they could come down here for a service. Or any other group of people who were out of favour and wanted a quiet meeting. So, one of the symbols that's drawn on the wall at the other end of this chamber, you might have noticed it, was a band of one symbol. Now, somebody said last year, well, that symbol was actually also used to indicate where cockfighting was taking place, because it looks like a bird's foot with a circle round it. I said, oh, that's interesting. And I thought, well, yeah, all right, we haven't found an old symbol of that down here, but this would actually be a superb place for a cockfighting pit to be established. All right, it wasn't designed for that, wasn't built for that, dug out for that in the original sort of thinking behind it, but in later years, if somebody wanted somewhere quiet to go, come down here, post a guard at top and bottom entrance, and away you go. So anything illicit, it was absolutely superb place. But why called Baron's Cave? Well, the barons that were meeting to draw up the Magna Carta met down here, allegedly, and it was while they were down here that the story evolved that when they wanted to summon the servants to bring down food, drink, light or whatever, they would actually drop a large rock on the floor which would make a booming sound that would summon them from the top. Now, this story was told by a lady at the beginning of the 1900s. There was written account of this is what she told people. And when we were sieving all the sand on the floor prior to opening to the public, when we sort of took it up on behalf of the local council, we found this round stone chucked down in this corner. And we decided that it's so well worn and rounded that this was possibly the stone that the old lady was dropping back in the early 1900s. So we found that it made a booming sound. Now you would have heard that when we were further up. And that can of course be heard throughout the cave.
Oh, wow.
That's what she said, that's what we said. Probably a load of old rubbish. But
No, it sounds logical though, doesn't it?
Well, it could be done, because shouting, you probably wouldn't hear.
No, but that
You'd just be lost, but that would carry through the ground.
My hot water, please.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, we just knocked the ink over the parchment. That was our first, we finally decided on the wording of the Magna Carta. Now you've got to knock the ink all over it. Now we're going to have to write it again.
Yeah, what did we say?
Yeah, so that was the story of that.
Amazing, isn't it? But the thing is, really constantly down you've got to sit up and well, grab that.